What about my love? Wasn't it enough? Just let me know.
Number 5, we got this one in here for you, Torque. We have Garrett Nussmeier from Louisiana State, LSU. The Nuss Bus.
What's he look like?
Is accelerating.
Snap up ever.
The Nussmeier is an interesting one for a lot of reasons, right? He's returning for another year when a lot of people thought he should have gone pro this past year.
It would have been drafted higher than Shedeur.
He probably would have. He lost
That's
nearly his entire
guarantee.
offensive line. Yeah. Knowing where Shedeur went now, yeah.
The owner pick.
But Nussmeier lost nearly his entire offensive line. And, rest in peace, 𝗕𝘂𝘀𝗀𝗀𝗀 𝗂𝘂𝘀𝗀𝗀. Losing him is definitely going to – he was going to move on to the NFL. So 𝗎𝘂𝘂𝘀𝗀🐂 wasn't going to be in the picture for Nussmeier as a receiving threat this next year. But, and you also throw in Mason Taylor, the tight end, leaving. He has new weapons. Nick Anderson coming in from Oklahoma, 6'4", 220 roughly. Big dude, very fast, great catch radius. I mean, he was a beast his freshman year at Oklahoma. He riddled with injuries this past season. If he gets back to his freshman year form, he's going to be a monster in Baton Rouge. You bring in as well Barian Brown from Kentucky. Very speedy, shifty guy who's going to be a little bit smaller. He's going to be a very different option compared to Nick Anderson. And then you also have Aaron Anderson, who was the leading receiver for LSU this past season. He tallied over 870 yards for the Tigers. He has arguably a better receiving core going into this next season, despite losing Mason Taylor and 𝗕𝘂𝘀𝗀𝗀𝗀. The offensive line is something that we want to see how he deals with. But me personally, I think that Nussmeier, regardless of how he does statistically, he can prove a lot with his decision-making, his leadership, battling through the adversity of this season of losing like 4 starting offensive linemen. I think that those things could say more about him than statistics could, possibly say. I think that as he goes into this final season where he's going to get drafted after this year, he has some things he can work on tape in terms of sometimes, right, his pocket presence and whatnot and decision-making downfield. But when it comes to his accuracy and things like that, right, and his anticipation, those are strengths of his that I think he'll be able to capitalize on. I think he's going to be able to build, strong connections with his new receivers. And for Nussmeier, right, he has first-round potential. There's so much changing around him that I could see NFL scouts wanting to, and owners, GMs, coaches, when they interview him, being like, "Hey man, like you knew you were losing 4 of your offensive linemen. You knew you were losing, one of your top receivers, and you were losing, right, your top tight end. Why'd you stay?" Right?
Yeah.
Why did you stick it out? Why would you choose when you could have been a 2nd-round pick, surefire? Why would you choose to come out in arguably, right, a stronger class, right? It could end up being that way. And I'm sure that teams are going to be impressed with his answer, right? And wanting to come back and prove himself, wanting to come back and lead this team, right? Be here in a transition year, right? Because like we talked about last week, this is an important year for Brian Kelly and this team. They can, if they get it right, not only does Brian Kelly see security, but if they get it right this season, that means LSU is probably making a playoff appearance.
Yeah,
so
that's a great point, man, because Brian Kelly is really dependent on how I always say Nussmeier, Garrett Nussmeier actually performs for them. And I agree with Torque. Yeah. You got to flatten out some of them up and downs, man, because, it's going to look a little different around Baton Rouge. And, they get a lot of transfers in, and of course y'all get a lot of transfers out too. I mean, it's really a turnstile out there at LSU. So hopefully he gets those things flattened out. But the size, the potential of the kid. I mean, let's look at the beginning of the year. Like even in the South Carolina game, he was a big part of why they were in that game as long as they were.
Yeah, I think when it comes to Nussmeier, the leadership that he brings and and some of those qualities, where you can rely on him, like, hey, our leader is back for another year to lead us into battle in 2025, right? Because, I mean, let's be honest out there, right? That in between, when you step in between those lines, it's a battlefield. You're out there with your brothers fighting against the opposition. And for Nussmeier to go out there as the signal caller to say, boys, there's a lot of our guys from last year left, but I am back. Not only is that going to be inspiring for his teammates, but I think it's going to mean something to those scouts who interview him next season. And I agree with Torque there too, right? I do want to see a little bit more consistency from him. I don't want him to, ride the wave. I don't want him to get, super high and then drop super low. When you look at the Texas A&M game, right? Hot start for LSU, right? They were in control of the game, right? They didn't blow the brakes off of A&M, but they were in control of the game in a hostile environment. But then second half, right? You throw some interceptions, the crowd gets back into it, A&M comes back and wins. I want to see Nussmeier be able to lead the offense out there in a hostile environment or at home and finish the game like he did against South Carolina. I was impressed with that, right? Regardless of how we thought the game should have ended, the penalties and whatnot. The fact that he
didn't get rattled by that.
Right. And that's a hostile environment out there, right, with South Carolina. That place is underrated. For him to go out there and lead that team back, I think that says something about him, about the talent and leader he is. I want to see him do that even more, right? Because we saw him fall short after taking a lead in College Station, right? I want to see him grow in some of these strengths that he already has. But for me, right, and just as a pure thrower of the football, Nussmeier might have some of the best anticipation of knowing where his guys are going to be and when of any quarterback that we have a lot of tape on. Because I've watched him play in person. I've watched him on tape. And for me, Nussmeier, I think he offers a lot of upside as an NFL prospect, but even just in the here and now. Nussmeier, I had him as a top 3 quarterback in this class. I think highly of him. He has things he can work on. Everyone does. But he possesses some anticipation traits that are they're rare to find in quarterbacks. He understands the playbook in his offense and where his guys are going to be.
I was going to say, I think he has the potential to, like, if everything pans out, he does have the potential to be the number 1 overall quarterback.
That's not a hot take, Sword. That is absolutely facts.
I feel like that's his
to
ceiling.
To a lot of people, it will be a hot take. But no, you're absolutely correct. And we said this last year. Remember when I had them as a 2-loss team making the SEC championship? He was a big part of that. Him and Kyron Lacy were 2 of the biggest parts of that. And if LSU would have played their same way in the first 4 or 5 games towards the end of their season, we would have been looking at a completely different team.
Nuss probably would have been out. He wouldn't have even been on this list. He'd have been in the draft by now.
That's absolute facts. I love that point.